All right, and boom, we're about to get into it with another very special episode. But what is up, everyone? It's me, J-Rod, the filmmaker, former film major, frequent fighting gamer from Philadelphia, and this week I want to talk to you all about the worst season of American Horror Story ever. Now, before we get into it, you guys can take your guess on what you think is the worst season of American Horror Story. You can comment down below. You might have already had my answer spoiled by either the thumbnail, maybe you fast forward in the video, who knows. But go ahead and give your answer of what you think is the worst season, especially if you've seen all of the seasons, but maybe there was a season somewhere in there that made you stop watching the show. So in your mind, that is the worst season ever. This video is going to be about my personal opinion and what I think is the worst season, but I would definitely love to hear more opinions out there, and we can maybe get a little discussion going along in the comments. But what up, it's me, J-Rod, like I said, and we just got through another spooky season. Halloween was last week, so spooky season is technically over, and now it's, I don't know, what do we call this? Mariah Carey season? I really don't know, but we are about to get into like Thanksgiving and Christmas, so the mood is changing completely. But I had a pretty fun and interesting spooky season this year. I didn't do anything. I'm not a huge Halloween person, so I didn't do anything for the Halloween season. I didn't have a costume. I didn't go out anywhere. I'm working on my Boba Fett helmet, but I didn't get it done in time for Halloween. So maybe next Halloween I'll do a full Boba Fett cosplay. Fingers crossed. If I can just the helmet's almost done. I think it just needs to be painted and then weathered and all that. No more like major changes need to be made to it. Just finishing. And then I got to start working on like the full rest of the like Boba Fett armor if I want to have a full Joan for next Halloween. But the way I do like to celebrate Halloween is the same way I like to celebrate every other occasion, and that's by watching film and TV. Y'all know me. I love watching film and TV. I make a video at the end of the year / beginning of the new year about everything that I've watched last year. And for the spooky season, I decided to theme everything I was watching around, spooky themed, Halloween themed type of media. Some horror stuff there, just some Halloween stuff that wasn't really horror. But I watched a lot of things. I recently watched all 3 of the original Scream movies. I know there are like 6 of them, but I just wanted to watch the first 3, the original trilogy of Scream movies, ahead of Ghostface coming to Mortal Kombat 1, and I did, and I actually really liked them. I can see the appeal of those movies. I have a lot more knowledge about Ghostface going into when he drops in Mortal Kombat, and I probably will get a lot more of the references and Easter eggs now. I watched The Deliverance on Netflix, which is a horror film made by Lee Daniels. It was actually pretty good. I didn't expect it to be bad or anything, but the acting in it I think is really good. It's unique, and I don't think Lee Daniels has ever tried a horror movie that I know of, so it was an interesting take from that director. I saw the movie Speak No Evil, which honestly, when I watched it, it was more of a thriller than a horror movie. Nothing too horrible really happens, but it was an interesting watch nonetheless. I watched the movie Mr. Crockett. I believe that's on Hulu, streaming on Hulu, and that one was really unique. It's a horror movie that is themed around like VHS kid shows, a little bit like Mr. Rogers parody in there, and it's really unique. It's not the best horror movie or anything I watched this season, but it is definitely the most unique one, and I would recommend you guys check it out just to see how wacky and wild that movie can get. And I also watched what I think is my favorite horror film of the spooky season was Alien Romulus. I really did like Alien Romulus. I like sci-fi, I like space, I like aliens, so I think that was probably part of the decision, but I thought it was just really well done, well created. I wasn't looking for an alien movie, but seeing the trailer for this one looked really good. Maybe because it went back to its roots and was like a fresh take on Alien, but it was really good. I would recommend Alien Romulus for sure. And I watched a couple TV shows here and there. You know that I watched Agatha all along if you saw last week's video. If you didn't, check out last week's video, first and final, for Agatha All Along, where I gave you guys my first reaction, my final thoughts, and a little bit on every single episode. So I'll put a link to that in the description, as well as add a card up above, so you guys can check out my Agatha All Along reaction and review. And I also just recently started the show Interview with a Vampire. By the time you're seeing this video, I probably will be done the first season, and I think there's 2 seasons out, so I'll be on my way to finishing the entire show. But it's actually pretty good. I've recently got into watching like vampire media every year. I did True Blood last year. I did the show First Kill on Netflix, and a lot of them are really cheesy. But I think Interview with a Vampire is the least cheesy. It's the most like earnest take on vampire media that I've seen so far. And then also I watched the most recent season of American Horror Stories. Now it's gonna get confusing throughout this video. American Horror Stories is the spin-off of American Horror Story. In order to avoid confusion, I will try to refer to Stories as the spin-off and Story as the original show, because the titles are just way too close to not get confused. But the spin-off series came back for part 2 of its 3rd season, and it is really good. We're going to talk a lot more about it later in the video, but it was very good. One of my favorite things that I watched this spooky season. But let's get into it with my opinions on American Horror Story, and we're going to start off with my personal history with the show. So American Horror Story, the original show, I started watching this show on October 9th of 2013. I know that's a very specific date, but I know that that's the date I started watching it because I watched it on the season premiere of American Horror Story Coven, which was the 3rd season, and I hadn't seen anything prior. This was leading up to this is actually the beginning of my senior year in high school. I was actually hanging out with a girlfriend of mine at the time. I was gonna call it a date, but we were literally just hanging out at my house watching TV, so it wasn't much of a date, but you know, close enough. American Horror Story Coven comes on. I had never seen it, but she had seen a couple episodes of the earlier seasons, so she recommended, hey, let's check it out. You might find it interesting. Let's watch it. So we did. We watched the season premiere of American Horror Story Coven, and from that moment on, I didn't know it right away, but I was intrigued enough with the show that from that moment, I was gonna continue to watch the entire show. I watched all of Coven, and then when it came back for Freak Show, I watched all of Freak Show. I watched all of the seasons to come out after that, and then I even went back and watched the first 2 seasons of Murder House and Asylum on Netflix. Like I said, that season premiered in 2013, so I have been watching the show for over 10 years. God damn, that makes me feel old. But the show premiered on October 5th of 2011. So the show overall has been out for 13 years now, going on 14 years next year. And that is kind of insane. The most recent season was the 12th season, and there have been a total of 132 episodes. And Ryan Murphy is the executive producer, as well as Brad Falchuk. Ryan Murphy created shows or produced shows prior to this like Nip Tuck and Glee, which neither of those are really in the same vein, but he said personally that he wanted to work on something that was kind of darker and different than his past works, and that spawned American Horror Story. I really liked the show. Like I said, I was hooked from that first time I watched Coven, and it wasn't that the show wasn't like scary. I wasn't there for like jump scares or like anything that was gross or grotesque. I was really just interested in the themes. I like the dark themes, but I also like the mystery about it. The occult, the macabre kind of drew me in because I wanted to see how far they go with those themes, and I just wanted to like, hey, where's this season gonna go? Where are these stories gonna go? It was definitely just a very interesting and mysterious show, and I think that is why I continue to watch from then on into present day. Basically, there are some really cool things that American Horror Story does, and I think casting is one of the most unique things, but is one of the most like, it's so American Horror Story. The casting in the show, they use a lot of actors for multiple seasons, but it's an anthology series in the sense that after the season is over, when it comes back, the next season is a completely different story. The slate is wiped clean. And so while actors and actresses will come back for multiple seasons, when they come back, they are usually going to be playing completely different characters. And I like that because it kind of gave me like the vibes of a theater troupe, or like the cast of a play or something, where you would see these reoccurring actors and actresses, but they would be playing completely different characters. Like a character or an actor could go from the hero of one episode to a villain of the next episode, from a main character to a side character. And I love seeing the range in the actors and actresses that they had in their cast. So that was another thing that kept me coming back season after season. Also, the supernatural elements. The first season I watched, Coven, was obviously about witches, but there were also like voodoo elements in that season. There was also a minotaur at one point in that season, and Evan Peters' character was basically a Frankenstein. Like, he kind of died and they put him back together with a bunch of random body parts, and I thought all of that happening at once was just so cool. That kind of amalgamation, that chopped and screwed, just taking all your favorite horror elements from all over the place and bringing them together into one story, is another reason why I love this show and why I kept coming back for more. And in my opinion, American Horror Story went on a great run for about 4 to 5 years, starting at season 1 and ending at season 5. So season 1 is Murder House, in my opinion, the best season that they've done. Asylum is a close second, really good season. Coven is another good one. Some people would say Coven is their favorite, and I could see why, but for me, it's Murder House. I just appreciate Coven for being the first season that I got into the thing. Then after Coven, they came back with Freak Show in 2014 to 2015, and then Hotel in 2015 to 2016. And those 5 seasons I just think was a great, spectacular run. All really good seasons. I feel like you could start with any of them and be interested in the show. But just going from season 1 to 5, like, personally, I kind of want to rewatch seasons 1 to 5. They're all really good, and I want to see if they still hold up, in my opinion, because I watched them as they came out on TV, except for 1 and 2. But they just really hooked me in. They really got me interested. Then we get to the first season that I would consider not to be their best work, and that is season 6, Roanoke. Now, my problem with Roanoke starts off like a mockumentary reality TV show, and for me, that took away a lot of the stakes associated with American Horror Story. There are a lot of real life stakes in these seasons. Characters really do die, you know. There are like murderers in some of these seasons, or sometimes there's like a supernatural element that is killing off characters, and usually it's a mystery of who is killing off the characters, how do we stop it, so on and so forth. Roanoke, having that reality TV mockumentary feel, took away the stakes for me and just had me less invested in that season than any other one. However, that was only the first half of the season. They did the mockumentary thing, they let it play out fully, and then they cut it off about halfway through the season and then kind of tried to bring the stakes back in. There were still some things about the season that I liked, but it was not my favorite. It was the first time where I watched a season of American Horror Story that I just wasn't fully vibing with. Then after that, we get into 2017 American Horror Story Cult. Cult was another one that is kind of rough on the memory. The reason that Cult was a hard watch, it was the first season where they didn't do any supernatural elements. Everything was grounded and realistic, but also the monster villain of American Horror Story Cult was Donald Trump, Jill Stein, and a bunch of clowns. So personally, especially today, that hits way too close to home, a lot closer to home than I wanted it to. And it goes to show that honestly, we are the real monsters. But then we got into American Horror Story Apocalypse the next season, and in my opinion, we were kind of back. American Horror Story Apocalypse was like a continuation of American Horror Story Murder House and American Horror Story Coven. Those were two of my favorite seasons, so I thought that they really did a good job with this one. Now, a lot of times, you know, retreading old waters can get like, oh, you took something that was pretty good and you made it just okay. But I thought they did a good job with American Horror Story Apocalypse. That's one that I could definitely rewatch because it isn't only a continuation of Murder House and Coven. There are some original elements and original character stories to it as well. And so I thought they did a really good job with it, especially for a continuation. Then 2019, we got American Horror Story 1984. And if you thought we were back with Apocalypse, we were so back with 1984. 1984 is another one of their best seasons. Might be their best season since the original 5, the run of the first 5 seasons that they did. And it's definitely the best modern season of American Horror Story that we got. 1984 was so good for multiple reasons. It was campy enough, but it was still dark. It used a lot of like tropes from slasher films and classic horror, and this is what we come back to this show for. The horror elements that we know about and that we've seen in other shows and movies, just bringing them all together, twisting them up and retelling them to us in a brand new, like fresh, original way. 84 is one of the best examples of that, because yes, it did, lean a lot on like that summer camp counselor slasher film, Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, Scream a little bit, I guess, all of that, but fresh and new with a brand new take. 84 is just so good. And like I said, I thought when I saw that season, we were so back. We hit a couple road bumps, but we are back and we know how to make American Horror Story again. Unfortunately, after that, we went on a deeper dip. We got American Horror Story double feature in 2021, and to this season's credit, it was hit hard by the pandemic. This was 2021. This was our first time where there was a 2-year hiatus between seasons because of the pandemic. 2019, we got 84. There was no new season in 2020 because of the COVID pandemic. Then we came back in 2021 with double feature, which, like the title suggests, was a double feature. It was a 2-part season, and I don't hate double feature. However, I liked the first part more than I liked the second part. So it felt kind of like the show got worse as it went on. The first part was called Red Tide. In the beginning, it was a slow burn. It took me a minute to get into it, and it was a new vampire story. They did vampires in American Horror Story Hotel. This was a new take on a vampire story, but it was completely separate and original from Hotel. I didn't like it at first, but I grew on the story. I was progressively getting more and more into it, and then once I really got into it, it was over. We got half a season, and then we had to move on to the next part, which was American Horror Story Death Valley, which I just did not like as much. Also, Death Valley was a present day and in the past story, so it felt like we got half a season with Red Tide, and then we got 2/4 of a season with Death Valley. And like Ron Swanson says,
never half-ass two things, whole ass one thing.
If we would have just gotten a full season of American Horror Story Red Tide, I probably wouldn't dislike it as much, but we got half of it, then we got something else, and I just didn't really enjoy it. But then we got American Horror Story NYC, and this is just not one of my favorites either. It was a bit boring. It didn't have any real supernatural elements either. I believe this one is based off of a real story, but it just didn't get me at all. Nothing really memorable happens in this season. It's kind of another murder mystery type story, serial killer type story, and there's nothing memorable about it for me to even speculate on with NYC. I just remember feeling pretty disappointed, and after being disappointed a bit by double feature, being even more disappointed by NYC, I felt the downward spiral of American Horror Story. We didn't hit rock bottom yet until the most recent season, American Horror Story Delicate. In my opinion, this is the subject of this video because this is the worst season of American Horror Story that we've gotten. It's the 12th season, and in my opinion, it's the worst season, which is an interesting trajectory for American Horror Story. I consider Murder House to be its best season, and I consider the 12th season to be its worst season. So it would seem like it got progressively worse over time, but that's why I gave you a little bit of insight on each season, because no, there were some declines, then hey, we're back. Then some more declines, and then hey, whoa, hold on. Until most recently, I can feel the decline, and I'm just hoping that if we get another season, well, they are renewed for a season 13. I'm just hoping season 13 feels like we're back, because season 12 was hard to get through. So we're going to talk more about season 12, American Horror Story Delicate, and the things about it that made it my least favorite season, and in my opinion, the worst season of American Horror Story that they've ever made. American Horror Story Delicate, which came out in 2023, but similar to how Double Feature got hit by the pandemic of 2020, American Horror Story Delicate got hit by the writer strike and the actor strike of 2023. So it started in 2023, but they had to take a long hiatus and come back in 2024. That honestly is probably one of my many problems with this season. I didn't know about the hiatus until it happened. I was watching the season kind of disappointed with it, and then it just kind of went off halfway through. Didn't come back the next week, didn't come back the week after, and then I had to look into it and find out it wasn't coming back until the next year. Delicate is actually based on a novel. It's based on the book Delicate Condition by Danielle Valentine. And I believe, according to Wikipedia, this is the first time they have ever adapted a story, and the other seasons have been original. Now, I have not read the book Delicate Condition, so I can't speak on if the problem is the source material or the text. But personally, I don't think the problem is the source material and the text. I think the problem is trying to adapt the text into a season of television that was like 8 episodes, 10 episodes. But one of my problems with it is this was their first time not doing an original story, and you could feel it. Delicate retreaded a lot of elements from past seasons, and it's not like how Apocalypse retreaded these and kind of added on to them. I feel like Delicate retreaded these themes and just did them worse. So if you look at it, there is a coven sort of in this season. There are a group of witches. I believe they identify as witches in this season, and a bunch of characters that we are just not going to relate to as much as the witches in the season American Horror Story Coven. In Coven, the witches were the main characters, the protagonists. In Delicate, the Coven are the antagonists. And out of all of the characters, there's not a single one that I really liked. I mean, personally, I like seeing Cara Delevingne act, so maybe I liked her character more than the others, but they all are just kind of blah. There is a similar plot from American Horror Story Cult. In that season, the main character kind of got gaslit, and her life was kind of being controlled, and she was being tormented by this unseen cult. Similar to what is going on in American Horror Story Delicate, the main character is constantly being tormented and controlled by these witches, but she doesn't know it, and everyone in her life is just gaslighting her to the fact that, no, I think it's all in your head. And so they retread those waters again, don't do as good a job. Then they also kind of retread some waters from Roanoke. Roanoke dealt with this ancient witch back in the time of Roanoke that was affecting the events of the story today. Same thing with the witch in American Horror Story Delicate. She was like this really ancient evil that was affecting the events of the story in modern day. And then also they kind of dealt with some stuff from Apocalypse. Apocalypse was a lot about birthing this evil baby, this Rosemary's Baby type character. And that is entirely what Delicate is about. So I don't mind retreading waters and elements of the past seasons if you do them better. I just don't think any of these things were done better in Delicate. They were just done again. The cast in these modern seasons just literally aren't what they used to be. A lot of those main players that we used to get as reoccurring characters in the early seasons are no longer here in the story. I mean, we used to have Jessica Lange, we used to have Sarah Paulson, we used to have Evan Peters, Lily Robb, Francis Conroy, Dennis O'Hare. And then there were even some characters that were, or actors and actresses that were added later, but still became like fan favorites. Angela Bassett, Kathy Bates, Adina Porter. So yeah, a lot of the actors and actresses that made up this weird theater troupe family of American Horror Story characters, they are no longer with us. And so we had a lot of brand new actors and actresses playing characters. And then there was one that came back, that was Emma Roberts. I believe Emma Roberts' first season was Coven, the first season that I had ever seen. But this is just not her best performance. I mean, honestly, she was really good in Coven, and she was also really good in 1984. This is probably her most boring character of any American Horror Story season, and she is the main character. But when I try to think about her arc and what happened, she doesn't do anything. Her character is not like proactive or even active in the season. Stuff is just happening to her from the first episode to the season finale. Even the way that she overcomes the evil in the end. I mean, technically this is a spoiler, so spoiler alert for Delicate. But the way she overcomes the evil in the end is that a ghost shows up and says, hey, say the spell. And she says the spell, and then she defeats the evil. And then she like takes her baby and her Oscar and leaves, I guess. She doesn't do anything in any of these episodes. It's just stuff being done to her the entire time, and it's really boring. Honestly, the entire season is really boring. And not having, there are a lot of new actors and actresses, some of them doing an okay job at their characters, but no one in the season that I can really latch onto, relate to, and identify with. unlike in past seasons where you always found that character, that one character or two characters that you fell in love with, despite the fact that everything in the story is kind of going to shit. I'll talk about the elephant in the room. Kim Kardashian makes an acting debut in the season, and while that seems like that's an easy, way to throw stones at the season and the casting decisions, Kim Kardashian is actually not that bad in the season. Her character seems pretty easy for her to get into. Her acting isn't bad. Her delivery and stuff isn't bad. She does an okay job. And I think that's the same case for a lot of the actors in this season. They don't do a bad job. I just feel like they weren't given much. So they do the best they can with what seems like a just disappointing script. Another problem I had was the pacing. I felt like the pacing was just so weird in this season. It starts off very slow, very slow, very boring. It's such a slow burn. And then when you get to the end, boom, it just ends. It rushes straight to the end. It feels like nothing happens really for the first few episodes. And then the season finale tries to explain everything that happened and resolve it in like less time than it ever should have. So you can kind of feel I don't know if it was because of the strikes and the 2-part season and the huge hiatus in between the episodes, but it felt like once you got to the end, it wasn't earned. You just had to rush to an end. And like I said, it probably just wasn't gonna be a good adaptation, going from a book, which I don't know how long the book is, but I'm gonna assume it's maybe over 100 pages, maybe a couple hundred pages, and to translate that into like 10 episodes of TV was just always probably going to feel rushed. In the end, I can't find anything really redeemable about this season. It wasn't all terrible, but I just can't find anything in it that was like, well, at least I liked this, With Roanoke, I can admit that while I didn't like the first half of the season, at least I did like the second half of the season. Lady Gaga does a pretty good performance in Roanoke as like this ancient witch, pagan witch type character. And I can look back to that as, hey, I thought that was pretty good. Cuba Gooding Jr. actually has a pretty good performance in Roanoke. And so, while I didn't like, and Kathy Bates as well, while I didn't like everything about Roanoke, there were things in that season that I did like. Similar to Cult. I think Cult, like I said, hits a little too close to home these days, but as I was watching it, I wasn't constantly disappointed every episode. I was actually invested in the mystery of what was going on, and I constantly thought there were supernatural elements there, and in the end, it turned out there wasn't any. And I liked going along for that ride, even if it was a bit of a deflection or diversion. With American Horror Story Delicate, it just feels overall very disappointing. And the thing about it is, this was the first season that I did not finish. All right, I watched it when it started, when it premiered. I watched it up until it came back from the hiatus next year. I watched a couple episodes and I was like, I don't even care about finishing the season. So I stopped maybe 2 to 3 episodes before the season ended, and I felt a huge amount of relief when I stopped watching the show, which is definitely a sign that it wasn't for me. And then when I thought about the fact that there were still episodes to go back and watch, I felt dread. I was like, I don't really want to watch it. While I do want to say that I watched the entire season, and I've watched every season before, so I kind of want to keep up that streak. Every time I thought about finishing the season, I just felt a sense of dread and horror, which I don't think was the intention of the show, but it just happened. I did eventually finish it because I knew I wanted to make this video, and I was like, how can I make a video about the season if I hadn't seen the end of the season? So I watched it, and I was as disappointed with the ending of the season as I was with the beginning and the middle and everything else in between. That is why I think American Horror Story Delicate is the worst season. But if you saw something else, if there was something about the season you liked, you want to talk about in the comments, go ahead and say that. And I did think about the fact that maybe it's not the show, maybe it's me. Maybe I have, it's been on for over 13 years. Maybe I have outgrown these themes and these concepts, and maybe I just don't want to watch this anymore. But I think I was quickly proven that that wasn't true by watching the newest season of the spin-off, American Horror Stories. Now, the spin-off is also an anthology series, but while the original show is a brand new story every season, the spin-off is a brand new story every episode. And not only is the spin-off season really good, I think that Ryan Murphy still knows how to make TV. He had the show Hollywood on Netflix, which is a completely different genre, but it is just such a really good show. Interesting to watch, really good character stories. And if they brought that back as an anthology, I would love to see more stories in Hollywood through this Ryan Murphy lens that he's created. There was the series Monster, which the first season it's on Netflix. The first season was about Jeffrey Dahmer, and I haven't seen it, but this got a lot of critical acclaim. The first season of Monster, the Jeffrey Dahmer story, got 4 nominations at the Golden Globes and got 6 nominations at the Primetime Emmys. Niecy Nash actually won the Primetime Emmy for Outstanding Supporting Actress in a Limited or Anthology Series or Movie. So, even though I didn't watch it, I think that there are a lot of people out there who would agree that it's a good season of television, just from the critical acclaim that it got. But also, American Horror Story has never received anywhere near that type of critical acclaim. And usually horror media itself just doesn't get anywhere close to that type of critical acclaim. Personally, I don't think I'm going to get into Monster. Currently, they're doing a second season about the Menendez brothers, but I'm not into true crime. I am more into fictionalized horror crime type media, because at least at the end of the day, I know it's fictional. And then also, most recently, Ryan Murphy is also doing a new series called Grotesquerie, which I just finished watching. If you cannot tell, the background is from Grotesquerie. And this is another serial killer style story. It has some sort of supernatural elements, some sort of mystery. Ryan Murphy has insisted that Grotesquerie and American Horror Story are just completely different, and they don't have much similarities between the two. But honestly, I think the main thing that separates them is that Grotesquerie is still good in 2024 and American Horror Story is not. I recently finished the first season of Grotesquerie, and there are really good performances in it. The mystery and the elements of it are really just catching and gripping, and I feel like this is how I used to feel about American Horror Story. I just don't anymore. So it's proof to me that Ryan Murphy could still make a good modern season of American Horror Story if he wanted to. For some reason, it just seems like he doesn't want to. But to talk about the spin-off a little bit more, American Horror Stories. Like I said, the most recent season, season 3, part 2, is really good. It has a lot of really good episodes. I mean, the first 2 seasons and the first part of the 3rd season also have a lot of really good episodes. But I can say personally, I think the best 5 episodes are these last 5 that came out. It's an anthology series where the story changes every episode as opposed to every season like the original show. Similar to something like The Twilight Zone, Love, Death, and Robots, or Black Mirror, if you have seen those. And because of that, that is one of the reasons why I think American Horror Stories, the spin-off, is a lot more successful than the original show. Because you get the elements that you used to get from the original show. The cast of characters that is constantly changing and morphing to whatever best suits the story. You get that every single episode, and it changes every single episode. In this most recent season, we got Michael Imperioli. If you don't know, he played Chris in The Sopranos. And a fun Easter egg about his character in the spin-off series is that he played a writer who's writing a horror film, and in The Sopranos he also wrote a horror film. His character Chris wrote a horror film. We had Henry Winkler in this season. We had Debbie Ryan in this season, and Victor Garber. So we had a lot of new actors coming in to play characters and doing exceptional jobs at their characters. But we also had a lot of really good actors and actresses in the earlier seasons, like Gwyneth Paltrow, Quvenzhané Wallis, Danny Trejo, and then we had a lot from that original American Horror Story cast coming back to play new characters in the spin-off series, like Gabrielle Sidibe, Matt Bowman, John Carroll Lynch, and Billy Lord. So it's just like the cast that we used to love the original series for. We don't get on the original series as much anymore, but they are still very present on the spin-off series. And I think it's less of a commitment because they only have to be there for 1 episode, and then they can do other things, prior engagement. So it's more likely that you're going to get these actors and actresses because you only need them for 1 episode. There are just more themes, and they're allowed to be more experimental on the spin-off series. Similar to how the seasons of American Horror Story, the original show, you could go from doing witches to doing haunted house to doing evil asylum to doing vampires and all of that. You get those same themes and that same amount of experimentation, but every single episode you're getting something new. So they have done zombie-esque characters. They have done leprechauns in the most recent season. They've done like medical horror in the most recent season, and every single episode you have no idea what you're going to get. So that experimentation and the amount of themes that they can add on and compound on top of each other is just so much more and has so much more variety. And I think the easiest reason why it works a lot better is if something doesn't work, if you're watching an episode and it's like, this theme is not really for me, in 30 minutes, they're going to switch to something new. Whereas if I'm watching American Horror Story Delicate and I'm like, this theme is not for me, I'm still going to have like 8 or 10 episodes of this show. And depending on other things in the real world, those episodes might go over the course of 2 different years, as opposed to an anthology series like the spinoff that is all streaming at once on Hulu, where I could finish the entire season in one day if I wanted to. The original show sometimes will take you 2 years to finish the new season. With that experimentation, they are also allowed to continue stories from the original show. So while we had to wait for one specific season with American Horror Story Apocalypse to continue Murder House or continue Coven, the spin-off series also has continuations of Murder House and Coven. The first episode that they did for the spin-off series was a continuation of the Rubberman story from Murder House, and then later they did a Dollhouse episode which continues the story of one of the characters from Coven, who was like the housekeeper who kept all these weird creepy dolls. Now he's collecting human dolls, and I just love the fact that that episode had nothing to do with Coven and the witches per se, but it still continued the story in a very interesting character spotlight type of way. So what I'm basically saying, we have one of the worst seasons of the original show, while we also have one of the best seasons of the spin-off series. Is why don't we cancel the original show and replace it with the spin-off series? It does a lot of the things that the original show used to do, but it does them today and it does them better. And also, like I said, the spin-off series is a Hulu exclusive, a streaming series or a streaming service exclusive for Hulu, while the original show still comes on FX on cable TV as well as is streaming on Hulu. And I feel like if we replace that slot where we usually put the original show with the spin-off series, we would get a lot more eyes on it, and people would see that the quality of the spin-off series is actually getting better and better, even though the quality of the original show was getting worse and worse. Another thing, this might be a personal gripe, but this one just drives me crazy for some reason. The original show used to always premiere around October, late September, early October, because they were going to do a Halloween themed episode that premieres around Halloween. It has Halloween themes, it mentions Halloween, it takes place on Halloween, and for some reason they don't do that anymore. And those used to be the best episodes of the show. The Halloween episode of Murder House, the Halloween episode of Freak Show, and I'm sure there are a couple of other seasons that had a Halloween episode. I think Hotel had a pretty good Halloween episode where all these like spirits and stuff inhabit the hotel. The Halloween episodes were always a highlight of the show, and for some reason they don't do them anymore in the original show. But the spin-off series usually comes back around Halloween to try to capitalize on it. They call it like the Halloween event for the spin-off series. Why don't they do that for the original show anymore? Honestly, I could be reaching here, but part of me thinks that they lower the quality of the original show to kind of highlight the quality of the spin-off series, because the original show has an audience that is going to show up for it. Like myself, I've been watching it for over 11 years, and even though some of the seasons aren't that good, I still want to come back every season to see if it's going to get better, if it's going to get worse, so on and so forth. Maybe they realize they don't have to gather an audience for the original show, but they do have to gather an audience for that spin-off series. So let's lower the quality of the original show, knowing people are going to come back and watch it, and that'll highlight the elements that is missing, because all of those elements have now moved to the spin-off series, and people are going to love it, and it's going to get more people to sign up for Hulu, and so on and so forth. I could be reaching. This could be a conspiracy theory, but we are talking about American Horror Story here, okay? This show is made of conspiracies. It's made of mystery. And personally, I think that that is part of it. So that is really all that I had to say. I believe that is everything, all the points I wanted to get across, and why I think American Horror Story Delicate is the worst season that has ever come of American Horror Story. They are still renewed for one more season, and according to Wikipedia, Ryan Murphy is in talks to get some classic cast members back. More specifically, it mentions Sarah Paulson and Evan Peters. Now, I don't think that that is all that is needed for a good season of American Horror Story, but that is one of the elements. If we can get a spectacular cast, a phenomenal cast that we recognize and we already have fallen in love with in the past, and then we need to get a good story on top of that, a great script, a great theme, and something for these actors and actresses to actually sink their teeth into, and not just a kind of play by numbers sort of retelling of tropes that we've done before. I think we could be back, because like I said, the path from season 1 to season 12 wasn't linear. There were bumps in the road, but there were some really good seasons, some bad seasons, more good seasons, more bad seasons. So this season it might be their last one for season 13, because it's the last one that they were renewed for. Hopefully they can come back to this new season with a bang, but we'll just have to wait and see. Boom. So that is everything that I wanted to say about the most recent season of American Horror Story. A little bit about the classic season, a little bit about the spin-offs and the other shows that Ryan Murphy is working on, and what I think is the worst season of American Horror Story. But like I said, it's just my opinion. You guys are entitled to have different thoughts or a different season that you think is worse. But personally, I think Delicate was just really bad, and it almost kind of ruined my hope, my faith in the series. But I will be back for season 13. We'll see what it has to offer, and hopefully they can improve on the series. If not, I'll still be back for the spinoff. I think the spinoff has a really good trajectory, is getting better and better. So I am confident that for at least a couple more seasons, the spinoff can carry the franchise if the original series continues to go down in the toilet. But that's going to be it for this one, you guys. So like I said, tell me how you feel. What is your favorite season of American Horror Story, and what is your least favorite season? What do you think that this new season 13 has to do to be really good? Does it need to bring back just Jessica Lange and Frances Conroy and the classics, Lily Robb? We even had Stevie Nicks show up in Coven as one of the witches. But tell me what you guys think. Do we need celebrity cameos? Do we need the classic cast? Do we need a new original story? Or do we need to drum up our past with the good stories that we had? Maybe Hotel Part 2, maybe Freak Show Part 2, because I think there was still a little bit of content in those seasons to mine. Crazy out there characters like Twisty the Clown or like Mr. Jingles. Now they're technically both played by the same actor, so we probably won't get both of them in the same season, but I would love to see some of those classic dark characters make a return, maybe get a season dedicated to them, a little more context. Or honestly, we can abandon the anthology series of the original show and go for the anthology format of the spin-off series and give us just like deep dive character episodes that specify on characters from the series, and just give us one episode about Twisty, one episode about Mr. Jingles, one episode about the vampires from Hotel. Whatever you want to do, I think that they could do it if they wanted to. The question is, do they really want to? So guys, that is going to be it for me today. That's going to be it for this video. But like I said, tell me how you feel. Tell me if you feel me. And I'll see you guys next time in another new one. Peace out. Agatha looking very normal in this first shot. Is this a prequel?
Another beautiful day.
Surprised to see you out here, detective.
Detective? Oh
Jane
no.
Doe.
I'm pretty sure it's a
Found her
sequel
down here
though.
by the water.
Cause?
Blunt force trauma.
And it's a murder mystery?